Imagine watching a quiet 21-year-old college student casually walk away with the absolute most cherished, deeply personal treasures of Queen Elizabeth II. While the entire world was obsessed with who got the castles and who wore the heavy crowns, the absolute real power struggle was happening in the shadows over the private collections. And Lady Louise Windsor just secured a monumental inheritance that has reportedly sent Queen Camilla's entire family into an absolute blinding fury. We are not talking about slight disappointment. We are talking about pure, unadulterated rage. When you finally uncover exactly what items changed hands, it exposes a massive, silent power shift that has been meticulously planned for years, and almost everyone completely missed it. Before we rip the veil off this explosive royal secret, I respectfully ask you to hit that subscribe button right now for Crown Watch. If you want the unfiltered, absolute truth behind the palace gates, your support is everything to us. Please subscribe so you never miss an update. Now, let's break down the sheer, terrifying brilliance of Lady Louise Windsor. She has always been the absolute quietest member of the royal family. She is technically a blood princess, born with the heavy title Her Royal Highness, but instead of demanding curtsies, she shockingly chose to drop the title and just go by Lady. She quietly attends St. Andrews University, the exact same school as Prince William and Catherine. She spent her summer breaks working a normal minimum wage job at a local garden center. She competes in intense carriage driving competitions using the surname Mountbatten Windsor. She is the absolute last person you would ever expect to be standing dead center in a vicious, high-stakes royal family war. But when Queen Elizabeth tragically passed away in September 2022, the secretive details of who inherited what finally began to leak, and Louise's name kept appearing over and over again on the most intimate documents, in ways that reportedly sent absolute shockwaves of anger through Queen Camilla's side of the family. Here is the undeniable baseline. When the Queen died, the massive billion-dollar properties went exactly where the law demanded. King Charles instantly inherited the sprawling 3,000-acre Balmoral estate in Scotland, plus the massive Sandringham house in Norfolk. We are talking about staggering private wealth worth roughly £550 million. Prince William inherited the vast Duchy of Cornwall and Highgrove. That is just the ancient line of succession doing its cold mechanical job. But Queen Elizabeth also possessed a massive, heavily guarded collection of deeply personal items. Irreplaceable jewelry, breathtaking private art, intimate family heirlooms, and cherished equestrian equipment. These objects are not part of the official crown estate. They belong to the woman, not the monarch. They carry enormous, crushing emotional weight. And this is exactly where the terrifyingly quiet transfer of power took place. Multiple, highly placed sources confirmed that Lady Louise received highly significant, incredibly valuable items directly from her grandmother's absolute private collection. These were not cheap, forgotten trinkets tossed in a drawer. These were the deeply intimate pieces the Queen kept physically close to her body. These items represented her true private soul away from the heavy burden of the crown. We are talking about objects the Queen touched, used, and intensely loved every single day for decades. And she deliberately chose to bypass senior royals and leave them to a young granddaughter who shared her exact quiet passions to truly comprehend why this massive inheritance matters and exactly why Camilla's family is reportedly furious. You have to understand one absolute fact. Lady Louise was not just a random grandchild. According to multiple terrified royal insiders, she was Queen Elizabeth's absolute, undisputed favorite, and not in a polite, subtle way. She was favored in a way that palace staff openly whispered about. The bond was forged in absolute fire. Louise was born a month prematurely in 2003 after her mother Sophie suffered a horrific, life-threatening medical crisis during delivery. Both mother and daughter nearly died. That terrifying trauma made Louise incredibly, fiercely precious to the Queen and Prince Philip. There is a legendary story from a terrified staff member who accidentally walked into a private room at Windsor and caught the Queen of England, the most powerful woman on earth, sitting casually on a couch watching a silly children's TV show called Mr. Tumble with Louise. Absolutely no protocol, no stiff upper lip, just a loving grandmother completely obsessed with her grandchild. The Queen could never do that with William and Harry. The crushing weight of the crown and the toxic media circus surrounding Princess Diana made it physically impossible. But with Louise, the Queen finally found absolute ordinary peace. And then, Prince Philip passed away in April 2021. His heavy final will was immediately sealed in a vault by a judge, keeping it completely hidden from the public. But the absolute most explosive details still leaked out. His most fiercely cherished, deeply personal possessions did not go to Charles. They did not go to William. They absolutely did not go to Harry. They went directly to Lady Louise. Philip specifically left her his custom-built, dark green four-wheeled carriage and his two beloved fell ponies. You have to understand, carriage driving was not a cute weekend hobby for Prince Philip. It was his absolute obsession. He practically invented the competitive sport in Britain. It was the core of his identity. During his globally broadcast funeral, those exact ponies stood in the courtyard. Resting on the empty carriage seat were his cap, his whip, and the exact sugar lumps he used to feed them. The entire globe watched that heartbreaking image, and that entire towering legacy was legally handed to a 17-year-old girl, simply because she had spent thousands of silent hours practicing with him in the mud. Prince Philip was a ruthless, calculating man who understood the absolute power of legacy. He knew exactly what it meant to publicly bypass the future kings of England and leave his true heart to Louise. He was making a terrifyingly clear statement to the entire institution about exactly who he trusted. So now, you have both the Queen and Prince Philip separately, deliberately choosing Lady Louise to inherit the absolute most emotionally significant treasures of the British monarchy. That is absolutely not a coincidence. That is a calculated, undeniable pattern. And that exact pattern is what is tearing Camilla's family apart. Queen Camilla has two biological children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. Tom has publicly stated the cold, brutal truth we are married in. We are not the royal family. Camilla's grandchildren lovingly call the king Upa. They served as pages of honor at the massive coronation. They are clearly deeply loved and always included in the warm family photos. But they are absolutely not heirs. They are not the bloodline. They do not receive the sacred royal treasures. And there is a massive, incredibly painful, unbridgeable canyon between being a loved stepchild and being legitimate blood in the cold. Unforgiving eyes of a 1,000-year-old institution. From Camilla's perspective, watching Louise walk away with these sacred treasures has to be absolutely agonizing. Camilla spent decades surviving intense global hatred as the other woman after Diana's tragic death. She crawled through the mud, rebuilt her shattered image, stood fiercely by Charles, and ultimately secured the ultimate prize, the title of queen. But no matter what title she wears, her biological bloodline remains completely locked on the outside. They get the lavish Christmas dinners, but they absolutely do not get Prince Philip's carriage or the Queen's private, priceless collection. Sources confirm there were incredibly tense, difficult discussions behind locked doors about exactly how to distribute the Queen's intimate belongings. The massive castles were law, but the emotional items, the pieces that actually prove who the monarch truly loved, became a massive, toxic source of private tension. Because every single priceless heirloom that was handed to Louise was an item permanently denied to Camilla's family. The absolute unspoken message echoing through the palace halls is terrifying. There is an elite, untouchable inner circle of blood. And despite decades of desperate integration, Camilla's children will permanently remain in the outer circle. And then there is the silent assassin of this story, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. Whilst the global press tore Diana, Kate, and Meghan to shreds, Sophie quietly built a fortress of absolute trust with the Queen, becoming her ultimate confidante. Today, Sophie champions the very humanitarian causes once held by Princess Diana, whilst her daughter Louise inherits the late Queen's greatest personal treasures. For Camilla, who spent a lifetime escaping Diana's ghost, this dynamic is a suffocating nightmare. Louise and her brother James represent the undeniable continuation of the royal bloodline. Camilla's children, no matter how impeccably they behave, simply do not. That harsh reality fuels a simmering, toxic tension beneath every forced smile at family gatherings. But here lies the sheer genius of Lady Louise. At 18, she had the legal right to demand her Royal Highness title, royal security, and global fame. Instead, she chose a different path entirely. She worked at a local garden center, joined the University Military Training Corps, and competed in muddy carriage driving trials. She chose a life of genuine substance over the hollow vanity of royal titles. Compare her to Harry and Meghan, who desperately clung to their titles whilst trashing the family for Hollywood cash, resulting in total exile. Louise played the ultimate long game. By asking for nothing, she made herself indispensable. When she steps onto the Buckingham Palace balcony, the British public goes wild for her quiet competence and dignity. This brings us to the endgame. Prince William faces a catastrophic crisis. When he takes the throne, the bench of working royals will be entirely empty. He is desperate for loyal, competent blood, and Louise is being meticulously positioned as his secret weapon. By leaving her their most sacred treasures, the Queen and Prince Philip transferred institutional legitimacy. They crowned her the future. Louise demanded nothing and walked away with the very soul of the monarchy. And absolutely no one, not even the Queen consort, can stop her.